Welcome to another episode, Chosen One. So tell me, what did they say this time? That you were too intense, too sharp, too dangerous to be around. Funny how they always talk big when they think you're alone. Funny how their courage evaporates the second the universe decides to send someone who can actually stand on your level. Look who's nervous now. Look who's whispering behind closed doors. Look who suddenly wants to play peacemaker after years of poking at your fire. Oh, the legends need to bow now? They didn't expect this plot twist, and honestly, neither did they deserve a heads up, because when they said you were the one they feared, they had no idea the universe was about to introduce someone who could match you, someone who didn't flinch when you spoke, someone who didn't step back when your energy rose. Someone who didn't run from your storm, but walked straight into it with a grin like, finally. Press like and subscribe, Chosen One, if you feel this message hitting where it needs to hit. It helps this message spread. Anyway, the silence around you right now, that's not peace. That's tension. That's the world realizing something has shifted. The same people who once tried to control your narrative can't even control their breathing now. They're watching the two most unpredictable forces on the board walk toward each other, and even the air feels different. This isn't imagination. This is the aftermath of a battle you didn't even know you were fighting. This is the part where enemies sit in the dark trying to understand what just happened. Because here's the truth they're choking on. They thought one of you was a problem. They thought you alone were dangerous. They thought you alone were the threat. But then the universe laughed and said, let's see what happens when the right match appears. And suddenly, the people who loved analyzing you don't even have the vocabulary to describe what they're watching now. See, the moment you met this person, it wasn't cute, it wasn't soft, it wasn't some cheesy scene where birds sing and violins cry. No, it was unsettling, it was sharp, it was that rare second in life when two people walk into the same room and everyone else feels it before either of you speak. That's why conversations froze. That's why smiles died halfway. That's why the atmosphere shifted like the universe held its breath. They expected noise. What they got was recognition. Not romantic recognition, not crush recognition. Something older, deeper, more dangerous. The kind of recognition predators share when they realize the other one isn't prey. The kind of recognition warriors feel when they finally meet someone who doesn't break under pressure. The kind of recognition villains share when they realize their madness has a mirror. And don't pretend you didn't feel it. Don't pretend your mind didn't go, wait, what is this? Because for the first time, you weren't the one lowering your voice to keep people comfortable. You weren't the one shrinking your power. You weren't the one watching your intensity scare the room. This time, the room wasn't scared of you. It was scared of what the two of you could become together. Tap, like, and subscribe, Chosen One. You're part of this mission, and it keeps this message alive. Friends tried to interrupt it, didn't they? They threw warnings at you like confetti. You're too similar. This will explode. This is dangerous. But the subtext, the real meaning, was so simple. We can't handle both of you in the same timeline because people could survive you. They could gossip. They could judge. They could spin stories about you to make themselves feel safe. But two of you, two minds that think faster than the room, two hearts that don't fear intensity, two energies that don't bend to validation, that's not a relationship. That's a revolution they can't control. And this is where the story gets personal. Remember when you were younger and adults said stuff like, tone it down? Remember the teachers who said, stop asking questions no one else thought of? Remember the friends who said, you're intimidating, like it was your fault for being awake in a world full of sleepwalkers. You've spent years shrinking because they couldn't handle your clarity. But now, the universe hands you someone who sees your intensity as normal, someone who doesn't back away, someone who doesn't treat your power like a problem. And suddenly, all those old memories come rushing back and you realize you were never too much. They were just too little. Now, imagine how that same old crowd feels watching you and your match stand in the same space. Two people who don't blink first. Two people who understand each other without explanation. Two people who scare the room without trying. The world doesn't know whether to applaud or run. So let's say it plainly. You didn't meet your competition. You met your complement. One of you is the spark. The other is the oxygen. Separate, you're intense. Together, you're a wildfire with a plan, and the enemy knows it. Their fear isn't random, it's informed, because history has always shown that when two disruptive minds meet, the old system cracks. When two unstoppable energies link up, the world rearranges itself. Humans call it a coincidence. The universe calls it timing. And there's another truth here they don't want to admit. They didn't fear you because you were loud. They feared you because you were right. You were honest. You were sharp enough to cut through the nonsense they built their lives on. But now, you've met someone who sees the world the same way, someone who complements your intensity instead of shrinking from it. And now, enemies are living in panic mode, replaying old conversations, remembering every time they underestimated you, because they know this duo doesn't forgive, doesn't forget, doesn't fold. And here's the final punch that will make their spine rattle. They thought one of you was dangerous. Now the universe has shown them two minds that move like strategy, two hearts that don't scare easily, two energies that don't bow, two people who see each other clearly. And together, you're the nightmare they prayed would never come true. This is not romance. This is not chaos. This is not coincidence. This is alignment. This is power meeting power. This is the moment the universe whispers, "Now watch." And they will, because they can't look away. Before we move deeper, Chosen One, take a second and breathe, because what comes next hits even harder than what you just heard. And if you're still here, that already tells me something. You're not just watching, you're sensing the shift. You feel the universe lining things up. You feel the tension around you changing shape. They thought you were dangerous alone. Wait until they understand what happens when you stand beside the one who matches you. If you're locked in, drop a 999 in the comments so the world knows another awakened mind is still in the room. And if you want to push this mission further, hit the super thanks. Support like yours fuels the work, whether it's a penny or a mountain. It all keeps the message alive. And now, Chosen One, let's step deeper into this story, piece by piece. Stay with me. If you're truly the one they fear, you'll feel the pull to stay until the end. Let's begin. Number 1. When two problems link up, the whole system panics. Funny how brave they acted when it was just you. Now look at them choking on their own fear because you're no longer fighting alone. They thought they had you contained. One unpredictable force, fine. One sharp mind, tolerable. One person who sees straight through every fake smile, every rigged game, every hidden motive, manageable. But the universe has a dark sense of humor, and it finally delivered the one update they never prepared for. Another person who sees exactly what you see. Another person who feels the same shift in the atmosphere. Another person who refuses to bow to the nonsense the world runs on. And suddenly, the entire ecosystem that used to gossip about you can't even stand upright. Their confidence melted the second you met your match. The collision wasn't cute, it wasn't soft, it wasn't two souls fluttering together in some romantic montage. It was a cracking sound, reality bending, a pressure drop you feel in your bones when something rare just happened. Because for the first time, you weren't the only one in the room who knew exactly what was going on. Someone else picked up the signals you always noticed. Someone else caught the lies mid-air. Someone else spotted the shadow behind the smile. And that alone is enough to break a system built on pretending. They handled you when you were isolated because isolation makes warriors look crazy. They could call you dramatic. They could label you too much. They could roll their eyes when you pointed out the truth nobody dared to say out loud. But now, two of you comparing notes, two of you confirming what nobody wanted to admit, two of you catching the same inconsistencies, reading the same energy shifts, seeing the same cracks in the mask. That's not a partnership. That's an uprising in slow motion, and let's address what's probably haunting your mind right now. Why did people react so weirdly when we met? Why did the room go quiet? Why did it feel like something dangerous just entered the timeline? Because they weren't scared of romance. They were scared of recognition. They were scared of two minds syncing without speaking. They were scared of the unspoken agreement between you two. We see everything now. That's the thing they cannot recover from. Your chaos didn't confuse your match. It excited them. Your intensity didn't overwhelm them. It called to them. Your insight didn't intimidate them. It validated what they already suspected. And in return, their order didn't cage you, it steadied you. Their clarity didn't silence you, it sharpened you. Their calm wasn't weakness. It was the kind of quiet someone develops after surviving storms you've never heard about. Individually, you were forces. Together, you became consequences. Imagine it from the enemy's point of view. They spent years building narratives, building walls, building lies to keep you doubting your own intuition. And overnight, all of that work became useless because you met someone who said, "No, you're not imagining it. They really are that fake." They knew the moment that happened. The whole illusion cracked. Two witnesses, two rebels, two people with nothing left to lose. The world panics at that combination. And let's tell the truth they don't want anyone to hear. People weren't scared you'd destroy each other. They were terrified you'd empower each other. Every time you talk, you unlock another piece. Every time you share a story, something clicks. Every time you look at each other, the world loses another layer of control over you, because now your mind isn't echoing in an empty room. Now your warnings are confirmed by someone who sees the same shape behind the curtain. That's what makes them fear you, because once two people agree that the system is fake, the system becomes irrelevant. You probably wondered at some point, why did it feel so intense so fast? Why did everything shift the moment we crossed paths? Because the universe was waiting for this moment, not to make you fall in love, to make you wake up, to make you unstoppable, to make you realize you were never too much. You were always the blueprint, waiting for the missing piece. This is the moment stories from your past start snapping into place. Remember all those times you said things nobody believed, all the red flags you pointed out while everyone laughed, all the strange instincts you had that later turned out to be true. You weren't wrong, you were early. And now someone else finally arrived on your timeline who was born early too. Together, your clarity is a weapon, your connection is a threat, your insight is a revolution. Enemies don't fear love stories, they fear alliances, they fear partnerships built on truth. They fear two people who can't be manipulated anymore, and this is why their reactions are so dramatic. This is why friends suddenly become concerned. This is why people start backing away like you're radioactive, because they used to study you, they used to analyze you, they used to think they understood how to disarm you, but now they're dealing with two unpredictable minds on one frequency, two sharp hearts that don't need permission, two energies that have nothing left to hide. Let me say it plainly so you don't underestimate what you are anymore. They thought one of you was dangerous. Two of you is a collapse they cannot repair. You became the glitch in their system. Your match became the virus that spread it. Together, you became the reason the whole network is failing. This isn't chaos meeting control. This is chaos being understood. This is control being unchained. This is the moment the universe says, let them try to stop this. And now you stand here, chosen one, not as someone misunderstood, but as someone finally seen. You're not being analyzed anymore. You're being watched, closely, quietly, nervously, because they know the truth now. Your power wasn't a phase. Your awareness wasn't an accident, and your match wasn't a coincidence. You were never meant to be managed. You were meant to be mirrored, and that mirror is the thing the world fears most. Number 2. When two minds link, gaslighters stop sleeping. Funny how they loved messing with you until the day you stopped standing alone. Every manipulator has a nightmare, and yours started the second you found someone who could decode their lies as fast as you did. Some people don't fear your voice, they fear who hears you now. Two sharp minds destroy illusions quicker than fire destroys paper. Your enemies always counted on one thing: isolation. Gaslighting only works when the target stands alone. Manipulation only works when one person doubts themselves. Lies only work when one person carries the entire weight of reality on their back. And for a long time, that was her life. They expected the same patterns, the same reactions, the same explosions they could point to and say, "See, she's unstable." That was their favorite trick. Push her, trigger her, then blame her for the chaos they created. But imagine this: the universe finally says enough and drops someone into her life who doesn't add fuel to her explosions, but hands her the blueprint behind them. Your first real act of unity didn't happen on a good day. It didn't happen during laughter or connection. No, it happened during the kind of moment people pretend they never saw. Someone tried to gaslight her. Someone thought they could twist the narrative again. Someone thought the same buttons would work. Someone thought she was still isolated. Except this time, she wasn't. She looked at him. He smiled, and the entire game board flipped. No words were needed, no explanation, no dramatic speeches. One glance was enough. He already understood the setup. He already saw the trap. He already detected the shifts in tone, the calculated pauses, the fake concern dripping off the enemy's voice. He saw everything she spent years trying to explain to people who refused to believe her. And in that moment she realized something terrifying and beautiful. She wasn't crazy. She was right. She had always been right. And now someone else finally understood the pattern without her needing to break herself to prove it. Imagine this: the enemy fires their usual move, expecting her to explode, but instead of chaos erupting, something colder appears. Precision, alignment, a unified front they never predicted. She didn't break this time. She sharpened, because when she looked at him, his expression didn't say, "Calm down." It said, "I see it. I see everything. And I'm already 10 steps ahead." He brought the plan. She brought the fury. Together, they became a problem no manipulator could handle. Let's answer the question that's probably popping up in the chosen ones' heads right now. Why did the gaslighter react so violently? Why was the fear so instant? Because manipulators rely on confusion, not confrontation. Their power dies the moment someone fully understands their strategy, and now you had two people dissecting the move in real time. This wasn't chaos versus control. This was strategic warfare. This was coordinated retaliation. This was the moment the enemy realized they weren't fighting a person, they were fighting a unit. Imagine this. Two wolves turning to face the same threat at the exact same second. That's what the enemy saw. Coordinated instinct, matching awareness, a mirrored readiness that shook them to the core. And for the first time, they questioned their own control. They questioned their script. They questioned whether the lies they used for years could survive this new alliance. They questioned everything. Because now they weren't dealing with a single target. They were dealing with two minds that refused to be fooled, two energies that wouldn't bend, two people who knew the exact shape of manipulation the moment it touched the air. Let's tell the truth plainly. You didn't just support each other. You weaponized awareness. You aligned instincts. You multiplied intelligence. And that's why the manipulator still wakes up sweating. Because manipulators fear one thing more than confrontation: exposure. And when the two of you united that day, you didn't just stop the gaslighting, you shattered the illusion they used to survive. Imagine the enemy trying to run their script. First they deny, then they twist, then they blame, then they pretend concern. Except now, every move they made was met with matching precision. Their denial was caught instantly. Their twisting hit a wall. Their blame slid right off her. Their fake concern was exposed like bad acting under bright lights. She wasn't spiraling, she was watching. He wasn't confused, he was analyzing. The room wasn't out of control, it was under inspection. And this is where the real panic started. They always counted on her reacting emotionally. It made their lies easier to defend. It made her easier to discredit. But now, her reaction was silent, cold, calculated. The explosion didn't happen outwardly, it happened internally. And in that silence, the manipulator finally faced the truth. Their power was gone. You want another question answered? Chosen one. Why did her calm anger scare them more than her loud anger? Because emotional explosions are predictable, but when someone who usually reacts suddenly stops reacting, that means they've stopped playing the game. That means they're thinking. That means they're calculating. And manipulators can't handle targets that think. They crumble. He didn't need to guide her. He didn't need to calm her. He just stood beside her like a mirror, reflecting every lie the manipulator threw into the air. And the more the enemy spoke, the more exposed they became. She brought the fury, yes, but it wasn't wild anymore. It was aimed. It was strategic. It was the kind of fury that doesn't burn everything, just the lies. He brought the plan, not controlling, not overriding, just aligning. He didn't silence her fire. He gave it direction. He didn't dim her energy. He refined it. And that's why this particular enemy still can't sleep. Because when they replay that day in their mind, they don't hear her voice. They hear the silence before she spoke. They see the look she gave him. They see the way he smiled, like the manipulator had walked right into a trap he laid 3 moves ago. They see two minds sinking against them. That is what keeps them awake. Let's break down the metaphor in simple terms. If she was the storm, he was the weather report that told her where to strike. If she was lightning, he was the metal rod guiding it straight into the truth. If she was fire, he was oxygen turning sparks into signal flares. If she was chaos, he was the outline that turned chaos into choreography. And together, they didn't just respond, they retaliated. And manipulators hate retaliation. They hate exposure. They hate witnesses. They hate people who aren't confused. They hate alliances. And above all, they hate when someone who used to crumble learns to stand without shaking. This is why the universe aligned you two, not for romance, not for comfort, but for clarity, for revolution, for protection. Because now the world doesn't just fear her intensity, they fear the intellect standing beside it. They don't just fear his strategy, they fear the fire fueling it. They don't just fear the combination, they fear the inevitability. This was the conspiracy they never saw coming, not your bond, not your chemistry, not your connection, but your unity against lies. Your first act as a team wasn't affection, it was exposure, it was truth, it was the end of gaslighting's reign. And that day, the universe whispered, they realized they messed with the wrong one, twice. And this, chosen one, is where the story really begins. Number 3. When two untouchables evolve into something the world can't measure. People feared you before. Now they fear what you become when someone finally stops dimming your power. This transformation wasn't soft, cute, or poetic. It was surgical, it was cold, it was the exact kind of shift that makes outsiders whisper what is happening to them. Because this wasn't about finding someone who merely understood you. This was about finding someone who amplified you. Someone who didn't calm your fire, but focused it. Someone who didn't restrain your mind, but unlocked its next form. And suddenly the world realized your evolution wasn't accidental. It was inevitable. Her intensity, it stopped being a problem the moment the right person looked at her like it was a weapon, not a flaw. His calculations. They stopped looking like manipulation and started looking like craft. Precision born from survival. Together, you didn't become softer, you became sharper. Not nicer, clearer, not quieter, more intentional. Imagine this, two forces once labeled too much, now standing beside each other, creating a frequency only the bold can hear. A frequency the weak can't decode, a frequency that makes people step back without knowing why. And yes, chosen one, you're probably asking, why does our connection disturb people so much? Because you stopped explaining yourselves to people who were committed to misunderstanding you. You stopped shrinking so others felt safe. You stopped translating your mind into a language they could handle. Instead, you started speaking in your own coded dialect, one built from shared scars, shared instincts, and shared clarity. This is the part that terrifies them. When two forces evolve together, nothing stays the same. You didn't just transform, you ascended into a version of yourselves the world has no defenses for. Number 4. When the universe announced you without warning. Funny how they mocked you in private, and now they can't walk into a room without feeling your presence choke the air. The world didn't adapt slowly. It snapped. One day, reality felt normal, predictable, safely rigged in the hands of the same tired people who thought they ran everything. Then suddenly, you two existed in the same timeline, and the atmosphere bent like metal under heat. Rooms didn't just feel different. They rearranged themselves around your gravity. Conversations shifted direction mid-sentence. People paused without knowing why. It was the kind of energy shift that even strangers felt in their bones. Imagine this, the universe dimming the background noise so the two of you stand out in high definition. Not a couple, not a team, not a power duo, something else, something the old rules of reality never planned for, something the system didn't code for. When you walked together, you weren't seen, you were registered as an event. And chosen one, you've probably wondered, why do people who hurt us suddenly start falling apart? Because when resonance rises, consequences follow. People who wronged either of you found bad luck trailing them like a shadow they couldn't outrun. Plans collapsed, secrets leaked, their own actions backfired on them with embarrassing precision. The universe wasn't protecting you quietly anymore. It was correcting the timeline loudly. This is the part that terrifies everyone the most. You didn't just break the mold. You made the old mold irrelevant. You were never meant to fit into their categories. Not lovers, not partners, not even powerful individuals. You became a glitch in their system, a duo that bends attention without trying, a force the world can't classify or contain. You were something forbidden under the old rules, but inevitable under the new ones. Number 5. The day their schemes crumbled in your shadow. Nothing terrifies a manipulator more than two people who refuse to turn on each other. They thought they were brilliant for trying to wedge themselves between you two. They whispered in separate corners. They twisted stories. They tossed bait disguised as concern. They tried the old trick, divide and conquer. But here's the gut punch they didn't expect. How do you separate a storm from the sky that fuels it? How do you disconnect a strategy from the spark that gives it purpose? You can't. And they learned that lesson the painful way. Imagine this. They push chaos your way, expecting her to explode. Instead, she laughs like she already saw the move 3 days ago. They feed rumors to him, expecting doubt. Instead, he smirks like he just spotted another amateur trying to cheat at a game he invented. Their failure wasn't dramatic. It was silent, humiliating, slow-motion collapse. And chosen one, here's probably what crosses your mind. Why were they so desperate to break us? Because your happiness was lethal. Your connection sharpened both of you. Your laughter synced in a way that made their insecurities sweat. Your ease with each other exposed how forced everyone else's relationships were. You two weren't draining each other, you were amplifying, and amplified predators, they hunt best. Here's the truth that stings them deepest. They weren't scared of your intensity, they were terrified of your joy. Your joy made you focused. Your unity made you unstoppable. Your bond made every enemy feel like prey. They tried to fracture you, but all they did was reveal their fear. They tried to break you, but all they did was expose your strength. They tried to separate you, but you became the one thing they never wanted to face. Number 6. When they called it dangerous, but you knew it was evolution. They didn't fear your darkness. They feared the version of you that no longer needed their approval to shine. People love pretending they know what's good for you. They study you from the sidelines like amateur critics, convinced they understand the plot better than the characters living it. So when the two of you leveled up together, they instantly labeled it toxic, chaotic, enabling, anything that helped them sleep at night. But here's the punchline. What they called chaos, you knew was authenticity. What they mocked as control, you understood as focus. What they whispered about as danger was the first time you actually felt alive. Imagine this. Two people who've spent years shrinking, finally standing at full height. Two minds that were always told to calm down, suddenly realizing their intensity wasn't a flaw. It was fuel. Two hearts that were forced into small boxes, finally ripping the tape off and breathing again. Of course, the world panicked. Of course, they assumed the worst. Evolution looks like destruction to people who've never expanded. And chosen one, you might wonder, why did everyone act like we were spiraling when we were actually growing? Because your awakening exposed their stagnation. When one of you rises, people notice. When two of you rise together, people project. They couldn't handle the reflection you created. You mirrored everything they avoided in themselves. Truth, bravery, self-awareness, intensity, alignment. You didn't bring out each other's worst. You brought out the traits they never deserved to witness. He sharpened her instincts. She unlocked his courage. He made her fiercer. She made him freer. You weren't collapsing. You were molting. You were shedding every lie they fed you. This wasn't destruction. This was rebirth. Number 7, breaking the rules. They never thought you'd question. They weren't afraid you'd stop following the rules. They were afraid you'd realize those rules were never real. You didn't just rewrite reality. You exposed how flimsy it always was. The world runs on invisible contracts, those silent agreements everyone signs without thinking. Stay small, stay soft, stay predictable. Don't question anything that keeps the system comfortable. For years, you both played along, out of survival, not belief. But once the two of you aligned, those contracts didn't just tear, they disintegrated. Imagine this. She walks into a room and points out the cage everyone else pretends isn't there. He studies the bars, finds the weak points, and snaps them without hesitation. Together, you didn't just break rules, you made new ones. You carved out pockets of existence where truth held more weight than politeness, where honesty wasn't punished, and where power wasn't something you asked permission to use. And chosen one, you might be thinking, why did people act like our clarity was dangerous? Because clarity exposes their comfort. When you reject the unspoken rules, you make everyone else confront how trapped they really are. People who cling to the system depend on your silence. When you break the script, they lose control of the narrative. What they called rebellion was really liberation. What they called arrogance was finally refusing to shrink. What they called disruption was you stepping into reality instead of illusion. He dismantled the structures she exposed. She challenged the lies he once tolerated. You didn't build a new world. You revealed the one they were too scared to enter. Together, you became the glitch in their social code, the exception that proves the system was never built to handle two awakened forces. You didn't rewrite the rules, you deleted them. Number 8, the two-headed warning sign the world couldn't define. They didn't need to see you to fear you. Your energy walked in 10 seconds before your bodies did. Before anyone even learned your names, they felt the disturbance, a tension, a shift, a warning their instincts picked up long before their minds understood it. You two weren't the type of energy people casually bump into. You were the kind that rearranged the room before your footsteps even hit the floor. Her chaos cracked masks open. His control forced people to question who they were pretending to be. Together, you weren't a couple. You were a silent earthquake dressed like royalty. Imagine this, a crowded room humming with noise until the two of you approach. Conversations glitch mid-sentence. People straighten their posture without knowing why. Some stare, some look away, some swallow hard, like their secrets suddenly got louder. That's what happens when truth and precision move as one. You didn't expose people verbally. Your presence did the work for you. And chosen one, you might wonder, why did we unsettle people who barely knew us? Because energy doesn't need introductions. Your match amplified your signal. Her chaos made people reveal their intentions instantly. His focus made them question every motive they thought they could hide. Together, you became a mirror they couldn't escape from. What they called dangerous was actually clarity. What they called intimidating was your refusal to shrink. What they called too much was just the universe turning the volume back to the level it was meant to be. You weren't destruction. You were the blueprint of a world where masks don't survive. Two forces, one frequency, unlabeled, unmanaged, unmistakable. You weren't an apocalypse. You were the truth wrapped in elegance, and the world never recovered from seeing it. Number 9. The secret code that made everyone else obsolete. They feared your words before, then they realized you don't even need words to destroy a lie. Your communication didn't evolve, it detonated. What used to take entire conversations now happened in a single glance. A flicker of eye contact became a full strategy meeting. A subtle touch became a warning, a countdown, a silent green light. You weren't bonding, you were syncing. You weren't guessing, you were reading each other like blueprints written in a language nobody else could even perceive. Imagine this, two minds so aligned that chaos becomes a tool, not a burden. Her chaos wasn't messy anymore, it was aimed. It was choice, not reaction. His control wasn't cold anymore. It was artistry, carved with intention and sharpened through instinct. Together, you didn't just approach problems, you designed attacks, you built systems, you crafted outcomes. Every target, every obstacle, every threat required a different play. And you never repeated the same move twice because no one deserved a recycled strategy. And chosen one, you might ask, how did we learn to read each other this fast? Because real alignment doesn't need instructions. It awakens, it reveals, it rearranges your instincts until the other person's thoughts feel like extensions of your own. It isn't romantic, it's tactical, it's survival, it's evolution. You became something terrifying and beautiful. He was the sword, cutting clean through illusions. She was the sanctuary, protecting the fire that forged him. She was the chaos that exposed the enemy's weak points. He was the design that turned those weak points into victories. You weren't predictable, you weren't balanced, you weren't healthy by their limited definition. You were effective. And effectiveness looks like destruction to those who live in denial. Your language didn't follow the world's grammar. Your language was destruction and design, built from truth, instinct and precision. A code only the two of you could speak. And a code the world fears you'll teach someone else. Number 10. When two humans turned into a rumor the world couldn't contain. They tried to define you, but how do you label a phenomenon that doesn't obey physics, let alone social rules? People didn't talk about you. Talking is casual. People whispered about you like you were classified information. They waited until the doors closed, until the room emptied, until they felt safe enough to say, what were they? Your presence wasn't something they understood. It was something they survived. And after you left, they stitched together theories, names, warnings, anything that made them feel less powerless in the face of what they witnessed. They gave you titles like the dangerous duo, the chaos couple, the architects of anarchy, cute, small, human. But labels only fit things that behave, things that bend, things that stay inside the lines drawn for them. You broke every box just by existing. Imagine this. Two people so synchronized that even silence feels like strategy. Two energies so aligned that the world stops treating you as separate beings and starts treating you as a single event. And chosen one, maybe you've wondered, why did we feel bigger than anything they could name? Because you weren't a relationship. Relationships follow rules. You rewrote them. You weren't heroes, they crave applause. You weren't villains, they crave attention. You weren't even rebels, you weren't reacting to anything. You were evolution, fully conscious, disguised as two humans who refused to dim their frequency. Your unity didn't create drama, it created disruption. Your presence didn't demand respect, it commanded it. You weren't a threat because you were wild, you were a threat because you were awake. And that's why the whispers turned into myths, myths turned into warnings, warnings turned into fascination. You didn't become a couple in their stories, you became a legend they still haven't figured out how to explain. Number 11, when your existence forced people to face themselves. They weren't threatened by you. They were threatened by who they could no longer pretend to be in your presence. Your presence didn't just attract attention, it detonated awakenings in people who weren't ready. You didn't walk into rooms quietly, you walked in like a revelation wrapped in human skin. Her chaos didn't destabilize the quiet ones, it freed them. It reminded them they were allowed to breathe louder, dream bigger, exist without shrinking. His discipline didn't silence the loud ones, it sharpened them. It showed them that power didn't need noise, it needed intention. Together, you shattered the false belief that strength and softness couldn't live in the same body. Imagine this. Someone who built their entire life on being collected suddenly realizes her fire awakened something they buried years ago. Or someone who spent their life being loud to feel powerful suddenly sees his calm and realizes volume was their disguise, not their truth. You didn't change them, you exposed them. And chosen one, you might wonder, why do people get emotional around us? Because you stripped their masks without touching them. You made them feel what they worked so hard to numb. You mirrored the parts of themselves they abandoned. Your presence forced people to confront the lies they stood on. Lies about who they should be, how they should act, what power looks like, what love looks like, what authenticity costs. You didn't inspire them gently, you cornered them with truth. Her chaos cracked their armor. His discipline showed them another way. Your unity created a frequency they couldn't hide from. You didn't just reveal something about the world, you revealed something about them. And once someone sees themselves clearly, they can never unsee it. Number 12. When power stopped being a competition and became a frequency. They expected you to fight for the spotlight. Instead, you turned the whole room into daylight. You didn't meet to fill gaps. You didn't meet to fix wounds. You didn't meet because one of you was incomplete. That's the lie people tell themselves so they can pretend your connection was ordinary, but nothing about you two was built on need. You arrived whole. You arrived formed. You arrived dangerous on your own. And when two whole forces meet, the universe doesn't whisper, it reverberates. You didn't compete for attention. You amplified each other until the walls glowed with possibility. Imagine this, two beams of light crossing paths, not dimming, not clashing, but merging into something brighter than either could be alone. That's why people stared. Not because of romance, but because alignment like that is rare, destabilizing, and impossible to fake. And chosen one, here's the thought that probably sits in the back of your mind. Why did our connection feel like recognition instead of attraction? Because attraction pulls, recognition clicks. You didn't complete each other, you confirmed each other. She wasn't his cage breaker, he already knew the cages were an illusion. She simply expanded the horizon he hadn't reached yet. He wasn't her restrainer, she never needed restraint. He gave her a stage big enough to hold her fire without dimming it. Imagine this, her presence turning his precision into artistry, his presence turning her chaos into influence. Two forces, not blending, but elevating. Together, you redefined what partnership means. Not dependence, not rescue, not fixing. Alignment, expansion, recognition. This was never about love the way people understand it. This was about evolution choosing witnesses. This was about power finding its counterpart. You didn't rise alone, you rose in sync, and the world had no category for that. Number 13. The love that made small lives look even smaller. They said real love requires shrinking. Then you showed up and proved expansion was the only thing that ever felt honest. You didn't follow the world's script. You didn't dim your light to keep the peace. You didn't twist yourselves into quieter, safer versions just to be lovable. That lie collapsed the moment you two crossed paths. Because this connection wasn't built on sacrifice or self-abandonment, it was built on growth, on evolution, on becoming more, not less. You dismantled the myth that love needs softness at the cost of power or comfort at the cost of potential. Imagine this, two forces meeting not to soothe each other, but to ignite each other. Not to make life easier, but to make life bigger. You didn't get together to rest. You got together to rise, and that's why people couldn't understand it. They've only seen relationships that require folding. Yours required unfolding. They've only witnessed love that demands compromise. Yours demanded expansion. And chosen one, maybe you've wondered, why did our connection look threatening to people who claimed they wanted the best for us? Because your love exposed their smallness. It exposed how much they settled, how much they dimmed, how much they traded authenticity for acceptance. You two didn't do that. You showed a version of love that didn't apologize for being loud, intense, ambitious, or untamable. He didn't soften her fire. He widened its reach. She didn't interrupt his structure. She elevated it into strategy. Together, you didn't seek comfort. You sought evolution. Your love wasn't a romance. It was a blueprint for something the world rarely sees. Two whole people choosing expansion over safety, alignment over performance, existence over approval. You didn't fall in love. You ascended into it. And that's what made your connection feel less like a story and more like a map for everything love could be if people stopped shrinking to earn it. Number 14. The rise. They prayed you wouldn't survive. They weren't scared you'd fail. They were scared you'd stop giving them the satisfaction of watching you fall. People studied you like you were a ticking bomb. They waited, they whispered, they watched for cracks, counting down to the moment your connection would finally collapse under its own intensity. They needed that collapse, because your rise didn't fit their logic. Your power didn't fit their rules. Your evolution didn't fit their comfort. But every time they prepared the stage for your downfall, you walked out shining brighter than before. They expected burnout. You delivered sunrise after sunrise. Imagine this. Two forces the world swore were too much, suddenly becoming the most stable thing in the room. Two energies they predicted would destroy each other, instead sharpening each other. Two people they swore would combust, instead ascending into versions of themselves that no one had met yet. Instead of fading, you refined. Instead of descending, you evolved. Instead of falling in love, you rose in it. And chosen one, you might ask yourself, why did our rise make people so uncomfortable? Because your evolution forced them to see how little they demanded from their own lives. Your growth exposed their stagnation. Your resilience exposed their fragility. Your love exposed their compromises. You didn't just succeed, you invalidated every excuse they used to stay small. They needed your collapse to feel right about their world. You gave them ascension instead. Your unity didn't create pressure. It created height. It created clarity. It created possibility. He didn't dim her intensity. He elevated it into purpose. She didn't disrupt his structure. She expanded it into vision. Together, you didn't build a relationship. You built a new definition of what together even means. Imagine two mountains rising side by side, not competing, not merging, but elevating the entire horizon just by existing next to each other. That's what terrified them. You didn't break. You didn't bend. You didn't crumble under the weight of your own power. You evolved into something they had no language for, a pair that didn't fall in love, but rose in it and forced the world to rise or choke trying to keep up. So, chosen one, this whole journey showed one truth. They were never scared of your love. They were scared of your evolution. You rose in ways they swore were impossible, and now the world has to adjust to the force you've become. If this message hit you anywhere real, press the like button right now. And if you're still not part of this family, make sure you hit subscribe so you don't miss what comes next. The universe isn't done with you yet, chosen one, and neither are we.